watching the 80 Money Show with me, Kavita Thapliyal, and let's talk about income tax. Now, income tax is often filled up jargons that are difficult to comprehend for a layman, and that's why on 80 Money Show we make sure that we break down those jargons for you to understand them in simpler terms. And today we would be breaking down one such jargon, AIS, or Annual Information Statement. Now, let's bring on board Preeti Khurana, Chief Editor, ClearTax, to take this discussion forward. Preeti, good evening and welcome to the show. Today, we are going to talk about the AIS. Now, a lot of people just know this term, but then doesn't know what exactly it is for. Annual Information Statement. What's the main purpose of this?
Right. So annual information statement actually came about sometime during the tax filing season last year. And it is perhaps, the most important statement that any taxpayer should be looking at to understand, what items their returns should include. This is basically a summary of all or most of their financial dealings. It is connected, of course, to their PAN number. And the whole purpose behind bringing out AIS was to improve compliance, to encourage voluntary compliance. And also, AIS is a mechanism for taxpayers to actually give feedback. So, AIS also has an option where, in case a taxpayer does not agree with certain items which may be appearing in their AIS form, they can pass on feedback online to the income tax department. They can say that they disagree or they do not agree with certain items which are present in their annual information statement. Now, the annual information statement essentially is a summary of information, not just which is already present in your form 26 AS, but it has a lot more details. So, for example, your form 26 AS will have say fixed deposits, interest income from fixed deposits, and mostly those items where at least some TDS has been deducted. Those items get captured in Form 26 AS. Whereas if you look at AIS, it will not only have your fixed deposit interest income on which TDS was deducted, but it will also include your savings account interest. It will tell you which is the bank account, what is the bank account number, and it will have various other details. For example, if you have received any dividends during the year, if you have if you have transacted in securities, you've sold securities, you've purchased mutual funds. So it has all of these information included in the annual information statement.
Sure. Okay. So I just want to understand now what are the components of this annual information statement? You're talking about all the financial transactions that you do within a year, but then are they divided into separate heads? What are the components we're talking about?
Right. So, if you look at the annual information statement, you will find information of all types. Some of it may be clubbed together. So, you may find information related to your fixed deposit interest income, savings account interest together. Then it'll have information about your capital gains if you've sold a property, if you've purchased a property, or if you have sold equity shares, you've sold mutual funds, you've bought mutual funds, even landlords who receive rent. So, that information is also present in AIS. So, if you are somebody who is a landlord and your tenant is claiming HRA deduction, so while claiming HRA deduction, they are supposed to report the PAN of the landlord. So, if you are the landlord, you will see that the rental income is also appearing in your AIS. So, essentially, this is a pretty detailed document. Now, when you go to the income tax department portal, the new portal, there is a section for services, and under that you will find AIS. AIS can be downloaded from this menu, and once you download it, of course, it runs into many pages. You can also look at TIS, which is the taxpayer information summary, which is nothing but a summarized statement of the AIS itself. So you will see that various heads under AIS have been very neatly summarized into a one-pager document in the TIS. Now, the AIS will help you understand various other transactions. If you've done foreign remittances, even those will be included in your AIS.
Now, talking about the kind of information you've described, the components which are a part of the AIS. What about the taxpayer information system that's contained in the AIS? Is that something one should be really considering? I mean, the entire statement is something that you should be looking at closely. But then, do explain us about taxpayer information system, TIS, if that's what it's called.
Sure. That's a, very nice question, Kavita. So actually, like I said, taxpayer information system statement is just a summary of everything that is appearing in your AIS. Now, the more important and the valid question that you asked is how do we look at it? What is the relevance of this? And when you are filing your tax return, you of course look at it, but what are the various things you should be careful of? So when you're looking at your AIS, essentially, when this was released sometime during the previous filing season, the government had said that, when you're looking at AIS, you may find certain information which is inconsistent with your own records, or you may disagree with it. For example, if you see mutual funds, you may not be able to report capital gains accurately just by looking at the AIS. You need to have a different set of data where you have details of, as to precisely the date on which a certain mutual fund was purchased and the date on which it was sold, whereas the AIS may not be able to give you historical data. So it will not be able to tell you what would be your capital gains. So when you are filing your tax return, the first step should be to actually thoroughly review your AIS. But the government clarified that if there are information which are present in your Form 26 AS, that remains the most important and the key form. So whatever details are there in your Form 26 AS, they must completely match with your income tax return. Say, for example, you're looking at fixed deposit interest and you have a certain amount in your Form 26 AS on which TDS was deducted, but you have some additional information in AIS, then you need to understand why there is a gap. But on whatever amount TDS was deducted, that has to be reported. Savings account interest, of course, will not figure in Form 26 AS. It will only be in the AIS. Therefore, AIS is a document to sort of understand all the financial transactions you may have undertaken, which may have an implication on your income tax return. So use that document to gain an understanding of what all you may be required to report, and whether what are the amounts you need to pick. That you must look at your own records, you must look at Form 26 AS, and if there is any discrepancy, then you go by Form 26 AS and report those numbers. And finally, when you are ultimately submitting your tax return, it is again a good practice to go over each of these items from the AIS and ensure that you have not missed reporting. For example, if you have, say, rental income appearing, or you have certain transactions, dividend income, for example, if TDS has not been deducted on your dividend income, you will not find it in Form 26 AS. So you have to look at the Form AIS where you will find these dividend incomes. And my recommendation would be to actually sit down and look at your bank statement and try and identify each of those dividend entries, and then report what you have actually received. So it's actually a pretty useful document. It gives you an insight into what is the information that the department already has about you, and therefore you need to be extra careful with reporting it. Make sure the amounts are accurate. If there is an inaccuracy, you can always give a feedback to the department. So around last year, when people were filing tax returns, several people actually missed out on including interest income from savings account. But because the government had AIS, therefore, these people started to receive notices. So very good practice to review each and every item in your AIS. And at the same time, if you disagree with something, then it would be a good practice to report it online, to submit your feedback online, and then file your return based on whatever documents you possess, your bank statements, your documentation around tax saving, and of course the Form 26 AS, even CBDT had said, remains the base of your income tax return filing.
So I just want to understand the entire system of giving the feedback. Now, how do you do this, and how much time does it take to rectify once you've given the feedback? Because the department will also cross-verify it, okay, and then they will have to see some kind of point from where you are coming on, and then they will rectify it on the system. So, how much time will this procedure take?
Yeah, so normally, you have an option of either doing an online feedback, you can even do offline feedback, and that's definitely a longer process. It's actually pretty simple to submit feedback online. What you have to do is log in to the income tax portal, select the item where you disagree or you have a feedback. Say, for example, you notice that there is certain dividend income, but you did not actually receive that dividend, or you did not hold those shares during the financial year. So you can submit a feedback, something like which says, I agree with the amount, or I disagree, or the amount is inaccurate, and you can submit a response. It's pretty user friendly. You can click on it, you can select the options, and you can submit it back. And usually what we have seen is that in a matter of 1 or 2 weeks, you will see that your AIS has, you will see a response. Once you log in again, you will see that a certain feedback has been captured, it has been reported, and you will be able to review it. And if there is a change, the department will undertake that change in your AIS. You may have to download it again, just to make sure that whatever changes were made have been incorporated in the AIS. Another way to do this is also by using the pre-fill option. Now you can use the pre-fill option, which is available on the portal, with ClearTax, with any of the online e-filing websites. Once you use the pre-fill option, it will pick information from your AIS and it will plot it in your income tax return. However, it's very important that you exercise extra caution, and you are very, very careful with picking and choosing what is accurately reflecting in your income tax return based on the pre-fill option. Like I'd suggested, capital gains may be inaccurate. So then again, you have to review that information very, very carefully. And any kind of feedback, it is recommended that this is done through an online process. And it's pretty simple. There are check boxes you need to select. You need to input your feedback, and you will be able to submit it.
All right. Now, talking about the GST turnover, how can you verify that on AIS?
Yeah, so actually, GST turnover now, it's becoming a quite an interesting subject, because now income tax return form also requires the new common ITR that they have come up with. It requires you to report your GST turnover. If you look at GST returns, there is a certain table in GSTR 9 form where you are supposed to report your turnover as per the Income Tax Act, or whatever you have reported in your income tax return. So essentially, if you are a business, it would be a good practice to reconcile these two separate incomes, these two separate turnovers, and see what needs to be reported where.
Sure. I think that will be all as far as the question answer session for AIS is concerned. Thank you so much, Preeti, for answering all our queries and guiding our viewers on how to look at the annual information statement. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we slip into a short break, but then post that, let's have Harshvardhan Rumta with us, who will talk about investment avenues for NRI and also answer our queries which are sent by our viewers. All of this and more after this break.